Hi, HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. On today's show, we have a special guest. We're joined by Davide Cervellin, Head of Analytics, Insights and Data at Booking.com. Davide, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. It's been a while since we last spoke, so it's good to see you again, and definitely bring in one of the best backgrounds to the video as possible. So tell everyone about the room you're in.
Yes, this room is called Disneyland, and we have rooms with fancy names, but also fancy pictures. So this one is the one I picked for today's session.
Amazing. Well, as I said to you before, it's hard not to be happy when you're in that room. So.
Exactly. It's very inspirational.
Fantastic. Davide, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Yes. So, I'm currently head of analytics at Booking.com. I moved to Amsterdam 3 months ago. And, this is all new for me. I'm learning about this new city, new culture, new company. It's good to be in the travel industry. As you can see, I get to think about places like the one behind me as work, which is a privilege. Before that, I was with PayPal and then eBay in London for 5 years, always leading analytics team here and there. On the personal side, I became a dad 1 year ago, almost. And so
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I also advise and coach startups. I'm advisor of a couple of startups specifically. One is called Avora, one is called Metrilo for data and analytics for the most part. And in the last year, I also wrote a book called Office of Cards, which is meant to help people find happiness and success in large organizations.
Well, it couldn't be more relevant for our show. So I'm really excited to have you on the show, and based on your background and also the book, which is something I'm really excited to read myself and also to share with all of our audience. So I'm really happy to have you on the show. So to jump in, what was the inspiration behind writing the book?
Yeah,
it's always an interesting one.
So that is actually the first sentence of the book.
Really?
So it's a joke, a comment that a friend of mine made over dinner because we were talking about life in large corporations. He's a strong advocate of startups and the freedom that comes in a startup and the level of engagement and passion that people have in an early stage company. And I was on the contrast talking about actually the goodness of working in a large corporation, but I did it very sarcastically. And at some point, he was laughing and said, this is great because what you say is so true, although no one has the courage to say it. You should write a book about it. That's what he said. That was a couple of years ago, and the sentence kind of stuck a little bit. And then I said, you know what, that's true. So I started looking for books similar to what I wanted to say, and I couldn't find any. And so I thought, it's kind of missing. Someone needs to hear this point of view, and so why don't I do it? And essentially, with this, I collected all of the things that I've learned over time, over my career, and that I've seen have helped the people that I had the privilege to manage. So this is the reason why. It's not because of that sentence. That sentence just made me think about this. But the people that I've had the luck to manage really saw benefits from being taught the things that I write about. And their gratitude towards me is the real motivation, because I thought I need to be able to have impact on more people. And how do I do it? Well, writing a book is definitely the starting point, not only because it helps me frame my thinking in a way that then is easy to transfer, but also because, then the content is out and everyone can access it.
And everyone does a similar thing, right? When they think about writing a book, they look at what's out there. Yeah. What's different about your book compared to what's already out there in this category?
Yeah. So I think there are two. So when someone is frustrated about work and wants to learn, new ways in which they could live a better life, I think you can find two types of books. One is the Winning by Jack Welch or Principles by Ray Dalio type of books. So those books talk about life in large corporations, life as a CEO, life as an accomplished leader. And they are awesome. I read a lot of books like that.
Me too.
Who doesn't, right? But the problem is those books are not easy to approach because they are words from established leaders.
It's hard to relate, right? In some
exactly.
sense, yeah.
Hard to relate. And the other type of book is Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week, or From Zero to One by Peter Thiel, or something like that. So books that invite you to consider your career not as part of a large organization, but as part of a smaller entity, or maybe be your own boss. Now, the problem with these two segments is that no one is talking to the average guy. So the middle manager in a company, the person that has started working 2 or 3 years ago and now is unhappy and they don't know what to do. And so I thought, okay, let's find this niche. And I really couldn't find anything that was, on the one end, talking to them and telling them the things they need to hear, but also on the other end, using a language that is easy to approach, using examples that these people can relate to. Because if you read Winning by Jack Welch, it's really not easy to do the things that Jack Welch suggests you to do. And so not easy even to understand the type of problem, right? Because he's talking at this level, but the people that I'm talking to are at a lower level. And so that's why I thought about writing a book on my own experience, not just using my own examples, but also using, examples from sports, from TV shows, from movies, from songs, from books, because I really want for people to think about their lives in a critical way and essentially appreciate the fact that even by watching a TV show, they can be learning and growing if they use an open-minded approach. And so that was really what I was after. I hope I did a good job. But again, my friends that don't have any, especially from childhood, that don't have any particular training, that they have not done the career that I've done and so on, they found some passages even funny, because it's so good to see you say that way. And then when I think about my own life, it applies as well.
I read quite a lot of reviews before this interview, and a lot of the feedback reflects what you said, that it's very relatable and digestible for the average person, and not just, as you said, some of the other books are aimed at the very, very top, whereas the vast majority of people out there are the everyday employee, and I think a lot of the feedback that I got was that you're very explicit with your examples as well, and you share all.
Yeah, I didn't hold much.
Yeah.
I think my point is, I want people to think about their lives, and also when they're reading my book, I want them to do something. That is my objective. So it's not
to take action, right? That's the main objective.
Exactly. So that's why, first of all, I did not withhold too much, because again, if you tell the truth, then you stimulate thinking, which is good. And also, using these very simple examples from everyday life, I think it's important, because then you can say, you know what? Yes, I was watching that episode yesterday, or yeah, that happened to me the other day. And if I do this, then it's easier that I can stimulate an action in someone, because I'm saying, hey, I'm not talking about being a CEO of General Electric. I'm talking about going to the butcher, right? So who doesn't? Everyone does. And so when you think about that, teaching you a lesson, then you can apply it to other fields and essentially grow and scale and learn. Right. So this is really what I hope I have accomplished.
So that being said, then share with our listeners some of the practical examples that you share in the book that stand out the most to you, that you're most excited about sharing with everyone.
Yeah. So the book is actually, I've written it using a very fresh language, because the way in which I identify there are truths that you need to accept, then there are rules, and then there are principles. Now, each of these is identified with a hashtag, because I also want people to really have this concept of whatever you do, you think about a hashtag, which is, like a reminder of something that you need to either know or do or keep in mind at all times. So if you read through the book, essentially, you have the rules. There are 4 rules that I identify are important in order to accept sometimes the frustration that come from a large corporation environment. So these 4 rules are, the first one is, it's a Game of Thrones, because of course, in large corporations, despite all the rules and red tape that is in place, sometimes it's what happens is very unpredictable. And so I relate this to Game of Thrones, because
Great analogy.
a show in which you never know, right? Oh, you like that character? Good, it's gonna die. So
he's gonna die next episode. You had no idea.
This is really something that you need to accept, which essentially, it means, in practical terms, it means don't think about a large corporation as a logical entity, because it's not. The second one is, there is no fair And this is connected to the first one, because the point is, don't think about fairness as a reason why you should be given what you think you deserve for whatever you put down on the table in terms of effort, in terms of investment, or whatever. This correlation does not always exist. And when it does, it's not on the level that you think it does. And so that creates frustration, because then you see people, going ahead of you, but you think they deserve a little less, and so on. So to simplify that, don't think about fairness in a large corporation. And then through the principles, you see how you can actually leverage this rule to your own advantage. But the first thing you need to accept is that there is no fairness in a large corporation, and sometimes in life, because sometimes people make distinctions between one thing and the other on the basis of criteria that you don't believe apply to that particular field, but somehow they do. Think about politics, think about other very, recent themes of conversations about, I don't know, for example, women in large corporations, or minorities, or any kind of religious, for example, things that may lead to taking a stand on things that is not based on logic, is based on some bias that was there before, and maybe you're not aware of it. And so you might think it's not fair. And so forget about fairness. That's what I'm trying to say here. The third one is consensus rules. And this is actually very important to accept, because in a large corporation, there is no decision that is made by a single person. In general, especially important ones, they are always shared. And that means that in order for you to do the things that you want to do, you always have to consider other people. This is the meaning of consensus rules. It means you need to consider what others think or feel about what you do and say, and you need to use that so that essentially you don't make enemies as you go along with your plan, as you do the things that you're supposed to do. Because if you do, then in the end, you're going to end up having less impact on the overall business. And the fourth and last one of these truths that you need to accept is perception is reality. And this is great. So perception is reality is essentially means that it doesn't matter what you say or do. What matters is how this is going to land on the person in front of you. Because sometimes you do things with the best of intentions, and then someone might misunderstand for any reason. Maybe your fault, it may be their fault, it may be a bias, like I said before, that was there. But if you don't focus on the perception that the others have of you, and instead you just focus on yourself, then you end up having misunderstandings, which lead to friction, which leads to problems, which leads to you having less impact. And so it's very, very important that you move the focus from what you do and what you say to how that's going to land, on how that's going to be perceived on the receiving end of your conversation, whatever that is. And this is very, very important because otherwise you end up having these problems to deal with, which take time, energy, make you enemies, and all these things are not going to help you. So these are the 4 truths that you need to accept in order to, first of all, stop being frustrated and understand that the game you're playing has rules that are a bit different from what you thought was there or what you think would be logical to find in this kind of environment.
That's great, because once you understand that, you can control the outcomes, as you said, or somewhat. But I suppose you can also manage your own expectations as well to stop yourself from being frustrated. Which many people, I definitely, when you was going through that list, I was thinking of my own past experiences, and I could relate to a lot of, people being promoted before I did. And, again, the way I've communicated to my team, even here in this company, and how that can be misconceived sometimes, and the message comes across in the wrong way. There's so many examples, but that's part and parcel of working in any business, really. And as you said beforehand, before the show, in life.
I mean, I want everyone who's listening to this to think about exactly as you just said. Is this true only in the corporate environment, or can I apply this also at home? Right? Can I apply this when I go to the post office? Can I apply this when I go to the butcher, when I go to the grocery shop? So these 3 rules are very simple. The first one is play the long game. And play the long game means don't focus on winning today's battle, but focus on winning tomorrow's war. And so, again, I don't want to use a corporate example right now. I'm going to use a simple personal life example, which is, for example, when you have a relationship with your partner and you have to decide where you're going to go for dinner tonight. right? Does it matter really where you're going to go have dinner tonight, or do you just want to have a happy evening with your partner, right? So avoid the discussion about the fact that you want steak and she wants fish, or vice versa. This is about making sure that we are aligned in the long term, that we do not fight over trivial things today, that we give up today's tiny satisfaction, which comes at a cost, because then you have an argument to go through, and then, you know, it doesn't lead anywhere, rather than focusing on the big picture, which is, I just want to spend quality time with this person. So this is playing the long game in private life, and it also applies to large corporations. The second one is own your life. This is a point about ownership and accountability. It's too easy to point the finger at others all the time. And then you say, hey, it's that fault, or the market is soft, so I'm not delivering. Oh, that decision has been made and it's not my decision, so there's nothing I can do about it. Most of the times there is something you can do about it, and you should do it. So this point is about ownership and accountability, about essentially making sure that you do not take the easy way out of blaming something or someone for whatever is happening to you. You need to make sure that you're really on the driver's seat of your life, and that if there is something even remotely helpful that you can do, you should do it at all times. And then the third point is really, I mentioned this quickly before, is make no enemies. This is like probably it would be the most important rule, because whenever you make an enemy in a corporate environment, that enemy is going to haunt you. And corporate environments are closed ecosystems. So people stick around, especially bad people stick around, because good people get promoted and they move on or change company and so on. But the bad people stay. So if you make an enemy out of these people, then you have to deal with that. Then they might come and haunt you when you least expect it. And it's not good. So whenever you have to make a decision in life or in a large corporation, think about if that decision is going to make you an enemy. And if so, you need to try and either change the decision or manage the situation, making sure that you avoid making an enemy. So speak to this person ahead of time, check what they feel, make sure their perception is your reality, because otherwise you have a problem. So these things is like a puzzle, that these pieces all go together. If you paint the picture using these colors, if you will, it will come up very, very nice.
What was sort of the biggest discovery you made when you was writing the book? What was any hidden surprises that you kind of reflected on past experience and there was sort of an aha moment?
In hindsight, yes. I think the biggest thing was talent alone doesn't take you very far. That was the biggest discovery, because, you know, I always believed that was above average. I mean, maybe not a genius, but above average. Academic results were saying that I was on the good side of things. And yet I saw people that were on the same basis, ideally less deserving, getting more. As you said, people getting promoted before me, people getting pay rises, people getting bigger roles, and I didn't. And then, so, you know, either I'm not as smart as I think I am, or I don't know, I'm doing something wrong. And so I've realized that the biggest change, the biggest reason why things were not working for me is that I wasn't focusing on the long game. I was focusing on short-term victory. I was very emotional in a bad way. I mean, like trying to get my way all the time. Because I was right and people weren't getting me. But that's it. And so the point is, even if you are right, there's a way to get people on board with you. It's not just about, hey, why don't you see it? You
still got to work. Yeah, you still got to work at it. Just because you know it's right doesn't mean that they should automatically come along the journey. You have to spend time engaging them in the process and building those relationships with people as well. I think that's a common frustration. You can see it very clearly, but you have to bring people along the journey with you.
And how to do it is also important, because it's not just the realization you have to do it is enough. You also need to learn how to do it. You need to learn how to get people to follow you, and you need to learn what to do, what not to do, and how to say things, and how to use your body, and so on, which is all written in the book. But again, it was a very deep self-reflection on the journey that I've taken myself, and that took me to where I am right now.
What are some of the other examples that you share within the book?
I think, well, there's a couple of interesting examples from interviews that I've taken.
Perfect. It's perfect for our audience. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, I don't want to give it away because I think I really want people to read it. It's interesting. But for example, there is the last part of the book, actually, after the closing thoughts, there is a part that I call Office Extras, which is tips and tricks to look for a job, apply to it, do the research, and then go for the interview, and then what to do after the interview. Actually, I'm looking forward from feedback from your audience on this, because clearly they are more than qualified, more than me for sure, to give a comment on that. But for example, I spent time describing how do I think about what I'm gonna wear on the interview day. I talk about how do I pick the chair in which I'm going to sit in the room. What are the things that I consider when I do that? Nothing of that is random. I also spend a lot of time talking about how do I prepare for the interview. So how do I study the person that I'm going to talk to? How do I check information about the company? How do I prepare questions for them that will essentially help them understand the kind of person I am and how thorough I am in trying to understand the type of company, the type of culture, and if that's a fit for me. So and also
you got to share some, Davide, on the questions. You have to give us some of those questions. Come on, you got to give us something. What are some of the questions that you ask?
Okay, so one that I like particularly is what is it to someone in the company. So as a candidate, I like asking what is one thing you don't like about your job and this company.
Oh.
And so it's two different questions, because one is about their job, and I try to ask this question to people that maybe in the panel, either my hiring manager or maybe someone that is at my level, just to understand something very close to what I will face. And then the company in general. And
oh, you asked that to the person who's interviewing you?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, right. So you can do that both ways. So you're asking the person in the company what they don't like, and they're trying to attract you at this point. So that's very interesting.
Exactly. And then as an interviewer, my favorite question, I actually wrote a blog post about it, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago. What do you want to have accomplished when you retire?
That's quite a big.
That's big.
It's a big question. I don't even know what I would even answer. That's a big question.
I wouldn't hire you. That's the problem. What I'm trying. So let me give you the framework. So what I'm trying to get to is: do you have a vision?
Sure.
For your
Okay. Yeah.
term? And especially because the thing that I like is retirement. A lot of people, the majority of people, view retirement as a date.
I don't think that way. That's why I find that's quite a hard question, because I don't want to retire. I don't. There's no concept of retirement. I'm just doing something different, something else. I'm just continuing to do stuff. Yeah,
that's a great answer, because it tells me that you're thinking about that and that you're viewing what you're doing as something that you do because you like and not because you have.
Yeah, there's no end date.
You see, that is an awesome answer. And a lot of people tell me, for example, well, not a lot of people, but the best candidates, that's they take a similar stand to you. So they don't view retirement as something that's going to happen at some point, but it's something they want to drive. So they say, I want to stop working when I'm 45, for example. Oh, okay. Why? Because I want to do this, because I want to do this, and so on. Good. And how are you going to do that? And they have a plan, and they can articulate this plan. So if you can do this so clearly, talking about your life, I know that in the work, in the job every day, you're going to be able to articulate the stories about customers, about business.
I'm with you. Yeah.
About sites, which is our job as analytics and data science.
Well, one of the things that data analysts normally struggle with, let's be honest, is actually telling the story. So that's a very good question from your perspective, because that's one thing you can ask them about, all of the more hard skills, but which they more probably can answer all of your questions. But when it comes to the soft skills of communicating analytics to the rest of the business and telling the story, I can understand why that would be a very important question.
Exactly. And so if you can do it with your own life dream, then you can do it in business. If you cannot do it with your own life dream, then it's probably difficult that you do it with. That's true.
Obviously, you've got so many different examples that you share throughout the book. What's the main thing that you want people to really take away from the book?
Self-reflection is really, so this book has been written with the intent of generating action, really. So I want people to think about their lives. I want people to read through what I've written and my blog and my book and everything, and think about what this means for them and what can they change today, especially if they're not happy about their current situation, in order to make their lives a little better and align their actions to their goals. because this is the problem. Sometimes people have goals. Yes, they have clarity on those, but they also have clarity on the problems, and there's no connection between the two. It's difficult for them to create a plan based on cause and effect, based on incremental steps that will take them to their goals. And so I think it's very important that people read my book and other books, because, by the way, my book is also meant to be a little bit of a key. There's a lot of suggested readings in there, books that have made an impact on me. And so it's really about going deeper on other topics. I don't want to rewrite anyone else's content. So I just refer to the book very quickly, telling what the book is for, and then say, if you want to know more, just go check the book. Because it's really about stimulating thought, stimulating self-reflection, and stimulating action. So my dream is that people that I don't know would one day hit me on Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever, telling me, I read your book, this is what I changed in my life, thank you very much. Right? This is the dream. It's not about selling millions of copies or whatever. If that happens, I'm happy. But the real thing is that I want to change people's lives. And one thing that really made me happy is people that I know, that I've known me a little bit. So former colleagues that I did not work directly with, but that, I know who they are. They've read the book and they sent me such messages, right? So it felt really heartwarming. It was super good to feel these people say, hey, one example, there's this person that told me, about own your life. Yes, I want to own my life. And I decided to now read a book because I want to read more. I never read enough in my life. And now I'm reading a book during my lunch break. And this is thanks to you. And I said, wow. Wow, what else can I want? This is great. And then this person is going to start doing something else, maybe before breakfast, and something else maybe before going to bed, and something else here and there. And their lives is going to change for good. And so the more this happens, the happier I am, and the more I have accomplished my goal of impacting people's lives.
It's amazing. And what a better purpose, right? This is exactly why I do the podcast.
Yeah.
That's the entire reason. The message is, it's not about me. It's about I almost feel like an imposter on my own show sometimes, because I kind of get the privilege to speak to amazing people like you, to share your knowledge with everyone else. I'm kind of just the vehicle to kind of bring amazing people on like yourself, share the knowledge experience of all of the leaders around the world to help them on their journey, right?
Yeah.
And when I get those messages on LinkedIn or the emails from people, it means so much, and that's the motivation to do it, right? So there's no better feeling than to know that you've kind of had an impact on someone's life and you've helped them along that journey, right? Well, look, Davide, before we wrap up, we're going to jump into the quick fire round, and you have 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
Okay.
No pressure. What was the number one thing that was holding you back from being a senior leader in your field?
Arrogance. I was too arrogant. I was thinking I was always right, and I wasn't articulating my ideas very well enough, and therefore I didn't have the impact that I could have. As soon as I changed that, problem solved.
Amazing. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Do the worst job that nobody wants to do, and do it the best you can.
Amazing. I know exactly why you said that. Can you elaborate on that for everyone else? But I love that one.
Yeah, so that came from a guy that I had the privilege to shadow for a week, a very senior guy in PayPal. And essentially, I was asking him, what can I do in order to accelerate my career? What advice would you have, and so on? And then he said, the problem is everyone wants to do the cool jobs. No one wants to do the ones with no gratitude, the ones with a lot of risk, the ones with where you have to have your hands dirty. And the thing is, these are more needed than the cool ones. And so you just go around this in a niche kind of approach. So there is a lot of supply of these jobs, zero demand, nobody wants them. So if you do them and then you do them well, you're going to be the hero in the end. So that was the context where this tip came from.
Yeah, it's a great piece of advice. What's one book you'd recommend, apart from your own? We're going to link that in the description for everyone to grab a copy. What's some other books that you'd recommend to our audience, and why?
So I would say 3 books. So one is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Super good book about owning your life, as I say in one of my hashtags, and about what that means in terms of leadership. both in the business world, and of course they are former military people, so that they refer also to that type of examples. But it's a very, very insightful book. Second one is Principles by Ray Dalio. It's a very, very good book. Both of them quite recent. I mean, last 2 or 3 years. They haven't been around for a long time, but very deep. Although, like I said at the beginning, is not 100% relatable in my opinion, but it makes you think a lot. So if you read Principles with an open mind, you're going to learn a couple things about yourself that you will benefit from a lot. And then the third one is Mindset from Carol Dweck. That, in my opinion, should be mandatory reading for every human being on earth, because that is, especially now that I'm a parent, I appreciate that a lot more. But even before, that book is fantastic. It shows you the difference between people that think in fixed terms about themselves, and so they think I can do these things, and these things I cannot do, and there's no way that I can ever do them, and so they kind of limit themselves. Or versus people that are successful that think in growth terms. So they think in, okay, I don't do it, but I can learn it and I can practice it and I can become good.
I love that. I need to read that then, because that's something I'm obsessed with at the moment, because I'm lucky that I've surrounded myself with the latter in that sense, where everyone that we've kind of recruit in the office has got that growth mindset that they actually have the opposite thought process. When there's something to challenge and they can't do it, they're drawn towards that. And they're more excited to actually go through that learning process and the journey of actually, rather than just a result, the actual journey is what excites them about getting it as well.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't start out that way, I'll be honest. And I kind of became more self-aware. And now I kind of, whenever I get in an uncomfortable situation, I now run towards it. And it's exhilarating. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you become in uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. What's one internet resource you used to keep up to date with current events or stay productive?
Well, it depends. I use a variety. I think it depends on the topic. I use LinkedIn a lot, really. I read the Financial Times every day. I read Morningstar every day for investment tips and stuff like that. I have a very customized feed on Apple News and Flipboard.
Of course you do. You're an analytics guy. I'm sure it's way too organized.
Yes. So, yeah, I try. I try to merge things in a smaller number of tools rather than going to 25 tools.
I'm with you.
But yeah, I mean, these are the main tools that I would say I use to stay connected to the world.
And then last question, where you are now, new company, what's one thing about your new business that you're at the moment that you're most excited about?
The mission of our team is amazing. So Booking.com is known for accommodation, and my team is called Experiences. We are trying to build something that is essentially everything that is not an accommodation when you travel.
That's what's so cool about it.
Think about museum tickets, think about concerts, think about food, think about all these things. And my job is I lead analytics for this business unit. So whatever we do, there is a question about what are we learning about the customer, and then how can we use it to make better decisions, both for our own businesses and for the accommodation business. So the challenge is massive. The opportunity is equally big, and I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much, Davide, for joining us and sharing your experience and insight. I'm really excited to grab a copy of the book, and I'm sure everyone listening is too as well. Sounds absolutely fascinating as well. And I love the way you've actually written it in a context for the broader population, but more importantly, it's full of practical examples that are actionable. And I think that's the most important thing as well. Before we wrap up, if there's one parting piece of guidance for our listeners, what would that be? And also, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you and learn more about your work and the book?
Yeah, I mean, piece of guidance is if you like the concepts, if you like this interview, just grab a copy of the book. I think we also have a discount for your listeners for the digital copy, because the book is the best way to understand my approach to success and happiness in life, and what to do, and the rules and the principles and examples. And it's also going to be a fun read in some parts, and I'm sure you're gonna find it hilarious, especially if you work in a large organization. And then I have a blog which is officeofcards.com, and I post one article a week. And in the blog, I go a little more in depth around themes that are very relevant and very up to date with what's going on. Sometimes I relate to piece of news that I hear. Sometimes I talk about my favorite interview questions or something like that. My suggested readings are in there. So clearly, if I read a book, I find it interesting, you're going to find it there. With a little bit of a description. Sometimes I do more in-depth reviews of these books, so people know what they are buying when they can be sure they're gonna like the content. And then follow me on social media. I have accounts. It's very easy to find, and that's really it.
Fantastic. Well, for everyone listening, guys, don't worry. I know there's a lot of information. I'm going to put all of the links in the description. So if you head over to hrleaders.com, you'll find a link to the book there. We also have a promo code HR_podcast, which will give you a discount on the book. So thank you very much for doing that for our listeners. Davide, I appreciate that. And there'll also be a link to the blog, to your reading list. Everything will be there for you guys, as always, to make things as easy as possible. So you have all of the notes on the websites. Davide, thank you again for taking the time out to share your experience, your journey, your book with our listeners. And I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you to your listeners for listening through to here.
No problem. Thanks a lot.